Hey friends, welcome back to Guess What? Compliance can be simple. I'm your host, Dr. Natasha Guess, and I'm the founder of Guess Compliance Consultant LLC, where I work with small and mid-sized healthcare practices to build compliance systems that actually function in real operational environments. Now, we are 7 episodes in the Compliance in the Workflow series, and today we're talking about what happens when something goes wrong. Because, as we know, something always eventually goes wrong. In every organization of every size, with the best policies and the most well-trained staff, something will go wrong. Now, there will be a moment that will come when a potential incident occurs and your organization or practice has to respond. And here is what I need you to understand before we walk through the steps. How an organization or a practice responds to an incident often matters more than the incident itself. And regulators, they rarely penalize organizations for isolated mistakes. What they do penalize is the absence of structure around those mistakes, meaning lack of documentation, patterns of inaction, repeated issues without any corrections, and an organization that responds to an incident with a clear, documented, structured process demonstrates compliance maturity. And compliance maturity is what protects your practice or organization during investigations. Now, let's walk through the 5 steps. Step 1 is what I call pause and preserve. This is the step that most organizations get wrong because it goes against the most natural human instinct. When something goes wrong, we want to fix it immediately. We want to make the problem go away. Someone wants to delete the email. Someone wants to reset the password. And someone wants to clean up whatever happened before anyone else sees it. That is human instinct. We all have it. But that instinct creates risk. And when something creates risk, you have to know how to mitigate it. Now, the correct first response when a potential incident is discovered is for you to pause. You secure affected systems to prevent further exposure. You preserve all of your logs and evidence exactly as they are. You do not delete anything. You do not alter records. Do not reset passwords without documentation. Do not clear your browser history. And definitely do not move or modify any files associated with the incident. The reason behind this is simple. Logs and records are evidence. Now, if your organization or practice later needs to demonstrate what happened and how it was handled, that evidence is essential. Destroying it, even accidentally, even when you have good intentions, can turn a manageable incident into a significantly worse situation. So, pause, preserve, then escalate internally so the right people are aware and the structured response can begin. The next step is to assess. Once you've secured your systems and your evidence is preserved, the organization moves from reaction to investigation. And this step is all about gathering facts. It is not about assigning blame. It is not about drawing conclusions. It's all about gathering facts. Now, the questions to answer at this stage are these. What happened? When did it happen? What information was involved? Who had access? Was the information actually viewed or acquired? And is there documentation that supports the facts you are gathering? At this stage, there are two common mistakes that often happen. The first is assuming something is definitely a breach, and the second is assuming something is definitely not a breach. Both of these assumptions are premature. The actual assessment process exists precisely to make that determination through structured analysis rather than your instinct. So, in step 2, you're gathering your facts, you're documenting what you find, and you're avoiding speculation. After that, you move to step 3, and this is the 4-factor risk assessment. This is a step required under the HIPAA breach notification rule. It is the formal analysis that determines whether a breach occurred and whether notification obligations are triggered. The 4 factors are these. Factor 1, the nature and extent of the protected health information involved, meaning what type of information was exposed, because a name alone carries less risk than a name combined with a diagnosis, a social security number, or substance use treatment information. The more sensitive and the more complete the information, the higher the potential risk. Factor 2 is about the unauthorized person. Who had access to the information? Was it a healthcare provider who had their own privacy obligations? Was it an unknown person who found a lost device? The identity and capability of the unauthorized person affects the likelihood that the information was used harmfully. The next factor is whether the information was actually acquired or viewed. In this step, can your organization demonstrate that the information was not accessed? In many cases, the answer to that is no. And when your organization or practice cannot demonstrate that the information was not accessed, HIPAA presumes that it was. Factor 4 deals with the extent to which risk was mitigated. So you're asking, were there steps taken that reduced the potential harm? Was the information recovered quickly? Was the unauthorized recipient notified of the error and asked to destroy the information? Mitigation does not eliminate the breach, but it can affect the risk level. Now, the outcome of this assessment will determine what comes next. After you've done this 4-factor assessment, the next step is to determine notification. If the assessment concludes that there is more than a low probability the information was compromised, you have a breach that occurred, and notification obligations are triggered. And those obligations include notifying affected individuals without unreasonable delay and no later than 60 days from the date the breach was discovered. It also includes notifying the Department of Health and Human Services. And it may also include notifying prominent media outlets if the breach affects 500 or more individuals in a single state or jurisdiction. And I want you to remember that the 60-day timeline, it is not a soft deadline. It is a regulatory requirement, and it begins from the date the breach was discovered, not the date the assessment was completed. Now, even when the assessment concludes that notification is not required, that conclusion must be documented. The assessment must be documented. The reasoning must be documented. Because if questions are ever asked, the documentation is the answer. I've added a step 5, and that is to document and improve. And this step is where compliance maturity is demonstrated. It is a step that separates organizations that recover from incidents cleanly from the organizations that face the same incidents again. Documentation at this stage includes what happened, when it happened, who was involved, what systems were accessed, the 4-factor analysis and its conclusion, and any corrective actions you've taken, any retraining that was completed, and any policy updates made as a result of the actual incident. After your documentation, you move to improvement. Every incident reveals something about the organization or the practices system. It may be a gap in access controls. It may be a communication channel that was not secured. It may be a workflow that no longer matched the policy, or a staff member who did not know the escalation pathway. Each of those revelations is an opportunity to strengthen the system so the same gap does not reopen. And organizations that treat incidents as system improvement opportunities, they build compliance maturity over time. The ones that treat incidents as problems to be survived and forgotten, they repeat them. I know that was a lot, but here's what I want you to take away from this episode. 5 steps. Pause and preserve. Assess. Conduct the 4-factor risk assessment. Determine notification. And then document and improve. None of these steps are complicated, but all of them do require discipline. They require the discipline to execute them consistently, to document them thoroughly, and to use them as opportunities to strengthen your systems. This is exactly what regulators are looking for when they evaluate an organization's compliance maturity. The response is the record. Make sure yours tells the right story. In our final episode of this series, we are going to zoom out from process to culture, because all the policies and frameworks and incident response steps in the world will not protect an organization or practice whose people are afraid to use them. I am Dr. Natasha Guess. Thank you for listening to Guess What? Compliance can be simple. Now, if today's episode made you think about whether your team knows what to do when something goes wrong, let us build that framework together. Schedule your free discovery call using the link in the show notes, and I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, keep it simple, stay compliant, and protect your patients.